the most powerful men in history, have mastered what you've always been told: to ignore your own desires. While everyone else scatters their energy like seeds in the wind, they learn to harness fire. It's not about morality. It's about becoming unmanageable. You wake up empty again. Not sad, not angry, just empty. As if something vital had escaped you during your inattention. You have been conditioned to release energy without realizing it, trained to obey every impulse until you become predictable and controllable. Carl Jung foresaw this when he wrote, "What you are not conscious of manifests itself in your life as destiny. When you are not conscious of your desires, it breeds a life of silent despair. You become an animal domesticated by your own appetites, losing your primal side with each gratification. The algorithm knows you better than you know yourself. It gives you exactly what exhausts you, then offers you more and more. You think you have a choice, but you're only reacting. Like a lab rat pressing a button to get another dose of dopamine. This is where it gets awkward. We're caught between two lies society tells us about desire. The first lie: give in to everything, repress nothing, follow every impulse because denial is harmful. The second lie: desire itself is dirty, dangerous, something to be ashamed of and locked away. Both paths lead to the same place: unconsciousness. You are either a slave to your impulses or a prisoner of repression. Jung called this the battle between personality and shadow. Your personality behaves appropriately, while your shadow, like Carl Jung, burns with disintegrated energy. Neither path teaches you the transformation of the third option. Meet Carl, a 32-year-old marketing executive, successful in theory, empty in reality. He spent years alternating between binge eating and shame, weekends of excess, and Monday mornings of self-loathing. He thought he was managing his stress, but in reality, he was managing himself. Each release threw him off focus, plunging him into a pattern he couldn't identify. The separation tore him apart. Part of him wanted to feel alive, electrified, passionate. Another part yearned for control, discipline, respect. He didn't realize these weren't opposites. They were steps in the same process. The warrior within faces the same dragon. Carl faced the compulsion for instant gratification, but instead of fostering or fueling it, Jung's approach is different. You integrate it. You look it straight in the eye and ask yourself, the question is not how to get rid of it, but what this energy is trying to become. The tension you feel between restriction and release is not a pathology. It is a potential seeking birth. The question is not whether you will feel desire. You are human. Of course you will. The question is whether desire will use you as its puppet or whether you will use it as your fuel. Society has never taught us the difference between repression and redirection. Repression creates pressure in the unconscious until something explodes, usually in the form of compulsive behavior, emotional outbursts, or psychological symptoms. Redirection channels that same energy into conscious creation until something transforms. One creates neurosis, the other genius. Think about the last time you felt truly powerful. Not artificially inflated by a passing pleasure, but genuinely powerful. There was probably a sense of restraint, a sense of conserving energy rather than losing it. This is no coincidence. This is the difference between scattered and focused energy, between reactive living and conscious creation. The modern epidemic of anxiety, depression, and chronic emptiness is not unrelated to our unconscious patterns of sexual release. They are symptoms of the same fundamental problem: energy drain. When your life force is constantly flowing outward without conscious direction, you find yourself starved for energy, seeking external sources to replenish what only inner growth can sustain. Here's what they don't tell you about periods of conscious abstinence. Your voice deepens. Your presence becomes magnetic. Your focus sharpens like a well-tempered blade. People notice something different about you, but they don't know what. There's a quality of restraint, a depth of power held in reserve. You don't lose your sexuality. You integrate it. Jung understood that libido isn't just physical energy. It's the pure creative force of the psyche itself. What Freud reduced to the sexual drive, Jung expanded to the entire spectrum of life energy. By consciously redirecting this energy, instead of unconsciously wasting it, you don't become less human. You become more whole. Olivia discovered this at 29, after another romantic failure, caused her to question everything. She thought she knew about love, attraction, and fulfillment. She sought intensity in others because she couldn't find it in herself. Jung called this Herma projection, looking in her romantic partners for the passion, depth, and vitality she hadn't yet achieved. For years, she'd been in relationships like a pinball machine. Each one promised to fill the void that seemed to grow with each breakup. She thought the problem was finding the right person. She didn't realize she was only half a person looking for someone to complete her. During 6 months of deliberate celibacy, something changed she couldn't have predicted. The desperate tone of their conversations disappeared. She stopped searching every room, every interaction, looking for validation, for sexual possibilities. Instead of needing attention, she demanded it. Without trying to be attractive, she became undeniably magnetic. Carl Jung's shadow work was beginning. She was facing the uncomfortable. Reality, her sexual patterns, weren't truly based on love, or even pleasure. It was about avoiding the terrifying intimacy of loneliness. Every relationship was a sophisticated form of self-abandonment, a way to escape the responsibility of self-realization. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you really are. But you cannot become who you are while constantly becoming what other people want you to be." Sexual energy, when consciously nurtured and directed, becomes the engine of individuation, the psychological process that leads to the blossoming of a complete and integrated human being. It's not about never feeling pleasure again. It's about understanding the difference between reactive pleasure and conscious choice. Reactive pleasure drains you, leaves you empty, and drives you to search for the next solution. Conscious choice builds you up and fulfills you. You create a source of lasting satisfaction, independent of external circumstances. Observe what happens when you hold back, even just once. Feel the energy that would normally be released. This energy doesn't disappear. It transforms into focus, creativity, a quality of presence that cannot be faked, bought, or borrowed. You stop absorbing energy from the world and start generating it for the world. The pain you feel when you realize how much energy you've unconsciously wasted over the years isn't weakness. It's an awakening. You're grieving for versions of yourself that could have existed, but grieving is the first step in reclaiming what was lost. Every moment of regret carries within it the seed of a new decision. Carl's turning point came when he realized he was using sexual release the same way he used social media, Netflix, food, and shopping to avoid feeling what he needed to feel. Emptiness wasn't the problem. Constant gratification was. Every time he sought external stimulation, he was running away from internal sensation. Your libido is the symbolic language of your psyche. Behind every physical impulse lies the unconscious, seeking to flourish, to know itself more fully, to create something that endures in the moment. By learning to decipher this language instead of responding to it automatically, you stop being its victim and become its interpreter. The energy that drives sexual desire is the same energy that drives artistic creation, commercial innovation, spiritual awakening, and psychological transformation. The difference lies not in the energy itself, but in the conscious way in which it is manipulated. Photographer Ethan discovered this during a period of creative drought. His work had become mechanical, uninspired, technically proficient but emotionally monotonous. Then a relationship ended, and instead of seeking immediate distraction in casual encounters, he decided to focus on the sexual energy he felt. Within weeks, his photography was transformed. That same energy, dissipated by an unconscious sexual release, became the raw material for his most powerful works. This is what Jung meant by transcendent function, the psychological ability to transform lower impulses into higher expressions, not by suppression, but by conscious redirection, not by eliminating energy, but by transforming it. The moment you realize you can conserve your energy instead of wasting it, everything changes. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability equals freedom. Control systems depend on your predictability. They need to know exactly which buttons to push to get the desired responses. But when you develop the ability to feel desire without immediately acting on it, you escape their algorithm. You become ungovernable. This is why conscious abstinence is not a matter of morality. It is a matter of sovereignty. Anyone who feels an attraction without automatically following it has regained their power over the system. They are no longer a lab rat pressing a button. They are the scientist observing their own reactions. Jung understood that the shadow contains not only our repressed negative qualities, but also our repressed power. The energy you unconsciously release through sexual gratification may well be the raw material for your untapped potential. Think about it, comma. Every great creative work, every revolutionary innovation, every moment of true courage has required someone to hold back their energy rather than release it in order to transform tension into transcendence. Leonardo da Vinci never married and may have lived long periods of celibacy. Tesla reportedly lived a celibate his entire life, claiming that sexual energy interfered with his scientific work. These men weren't escapists. They understood that the energy that fuels sexual desire could be consciously redirected into a creation that endures beyond any physical pleasure. Next time desire calls for a pause, ask yourself, will this exhaust me or strengthen me? Will it scatter my energy or focus it? Will it lead to an unconscious reaction or a conscious creation? The answer is not always abstinence, but always awareness. Olivia discovered that her 6 months of celibacy did not mean never having sex again. It was about learning to choose her sexuality from a place of wholeness rather than emptiness. When she finally entered her next relationship, she did so as a whole person seeking communion, not as half a person seeking fulfillment. The difference was profound. Instead of losing herself in the relationship, she surrendered to it. Carl discovered that containing his sexual energy was like learning to meditate. At first, it seemed impossible. The urges seemed insurmountable, the discomfort unbearable. Then it became uncomfortable but manageable. He could hold back that energy without acting immediately. Then something shifted and he became powerful. He didn't lose his masculinity by practicing restraint. He claimed a deeper masculinity, one that didn't require constant validation from external sources. The algorithm breaks when you stop reacting in predictable ways. Social media loses its influence when you don't need the dopamine rush of likes and comments. Consumer culture loses its power when you're not constantly searching for the next purchase to fill that void. Dating apps lose their relevance when we're not desperately looking for someone to fulfill us. We're beginning to notice that everything in modern life is designed to exhaust us. The incessant scrolling, the constant stimulation, the cultural pressure that pushes us to always want something, to buy something, to consume something. It's about keeping you dependent, predictable, and controllable. A person who runs out of energy is manipulable, but someone who learns to hold back becomes dangerous to systems that depend on scarcity and desperation. They don't need what everyone else needs. They don't want what everyone else desires. They discovered an inner source of power that cannot be commercialized, manipulated, or confiscated. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, rather than what society, family, or culture expects us to be. This requires breaking free from the collective patterns, including sexual patterns that keep us unconscious and dependent. By learning to consciously work with sexual energy, we discover that it was never really about sex. Sex was simply the most obvious manifestation of a deeper impulse toward creation, connection, and transcendence. By consciously redirecting this energy, we don't lose the ability to connect. We gain the capacity for conscious connection. The fear that abstinence will make you weird, repressed, or disconnected from life is actually the opposite. It's unconscious sexual behavior that makes you weird, desperate, dependent, constantly seeking a sense of external fulfillment. Conscious sexual energy makes you magnetic, creative, and truly confident. You may worry that holding back means losing passion. But think about it this way. Would you rather be a scattered spark or a persistent fire? Sexual energy, consciously contained and redirected, doesn't disappear. It becomes the fuel for everything else. Your creativity, your leadership, your ability to be present with another person, not out of need but out of choice. Think of artists and leaders whose most influential periods followed deliberate celibacy. Gandhi himself, Tesla, Jung, experienced periods of sexual restraint that coincided with his deepest psychological insights. They didn't run away from life, but immersed themselves in it. This path isn't about living without love. It's about living without addiction. There is a profound difference between choosing intimacy in a place of fullness and seeking it in emptiness. Jung called this the development of the transcendent function, the ability to maintain opposing intentions until a third way emerges. Instead of the polarity between complacency and repression, integration is discovered. Instead of being dominated by desire or controlling it, we transform it. Ethan, a 35-year-old writer, discovered this during a year of voluntary celibacy after his divorce. At first, he felt like he was punishing himself, depriving himself of pleasure for a failed attempt at personal growth. The first few weeks were difficult, not only physically but also psychologically. He had to confront the emptiness he'd been trying to fill with sex. But little by little, something changed, surprising him. The desperate tone of his interactions with women disappeared. He stopped analyzing every conversation in search of a sexual possibility, every glance in search of attraction. He could be present to others without a specific goal, without expecting anything in return. Even more surprising, he began to write with an intensity he had never achieved before. The energy he unconsciously released through sexual activity found new channels. His work acquired a depth and power that surprised him. He wasn't sublimating his sexuality. He was discovering what sexuality really was. The creative force, temporarily focused on physical expression, was capable of much more. During those months, Ethan wrote his first novel, not because he was running away from sex, but because the same energy that flowed outward through sexual liberation was now flowing into conscious creation. He realized he was using sex the way some use alcohol to avoid feeling, thinking and creating. Your inner temple doesn't demand that you reject your body. It demands that you honor it so completely that you don't settle for unconscious liberation. You desire conscious communion with yourself, with your work, with others. You seek experiences that strengthen you rather than deplete you, that add life force rather than deplete you. The fear that restriction will make you cold, disconnected, or less passionate is actually the opposite. When you're not constantly releasing your energy through unconscious sexual release, you become more present, not less. More alive, not less. More capable of true intimacy, not less. Elena, a 31-year-old therapist, discovered this during 8 months of celibacy. After recognizing that she was using sex to avoid difficult emotions, she was fleeing pain, anger, and fear with a sexual intensity that felt like connection but was actually a disconnection from herself. During her period of abstinence, she learned to feel without seeking immediate relief. The anxiety she had treated through sexual liberation did not disappear, but was transformed into creative energy. The pain she had avoided through physical pleasure became the source of greater empathy for her clients. The anger she had dissipated through sexual intensity became the driving force behind the necessary changes in her life. It's not about becoming a monk or rejecting pleasure, it's about being aware of how your energy flows, where it goes, what it creates or destroys. Conscious choice replaces unconscious compulsion. Deliberate action replaces automatic reaction. As you learn to consciously control your sexual energy, you discover that it was never just about sex. It was about life force, creative power, the ability to generate rather than simply consume, to build rather than simply release, to create something lasting rather than simply reacting to immediate impulses. The transformation is not just psychological, but physiological. Your nervous system learns to handle higher energy levels without seeking immediate release. Your ability to delay gratification increases. Your ability to focus on long-term goals is strengthened. Your confidence relies on internal resources rather than external validation. Music, so it's your decision. You can continue to scatter your energy like seeds in the wind, hoping that something will grow. Or you can learn to hold fire in your hands and become someone who creates rather than merely consumes. This is a rite of passage in Carl Jung's shadow work, confronting the unconscious impulse, integrating it, and coming away whole, not wounded or repressed, but transformed. Jung wrote, "One who looks beyond dreams, he who looks inward awakens." The world will continue to draw your energy toward products, people, and experiences that promise to fulfill what only you can fulfill. But awakening comes when you turn inward and discover the source of power that has always been there. Fire doesn't need to be unleashed to be powerful. Sometimes the greatest power comes from learning to contain it, direct it, and transform it into something that builds rather than simply burns. It's not about becoming perfect or pure. It's about being aware. Aware of your energy, your choices, your power, aware of the difference between reacting and responding, between being manipulated by desire and exploiting it. If this resonates with you, if you're ready to stop wasting energy and start generating power, leave the phrase "fire transforms" in the comments. Not as a promise to never feel desire again, but as a commitment to feel it consciously. The easy path is always available. The powerful path requires a decision. The decision to turn inward when the world pushes you outward, to stand firm when everything tells you to let go, to transform when everyone else reacts. Your true power isn't waiting to be discovered. It's waiting for you to stop giving it up. Fire transforms. Let it transform you.